I'd like to welcome everyone to our Cloverbud volunteer training. My name is Bruce Zimmer and I work as the 4-H Extension Educator. And this is our new chance or new opportunity to teach virtually. So today our topic is all about Cloverbud Advisor Training. Catherine?
I am Catherine Hartline. I am the 4-H Program Coordinator for the county. I am also a 4-H volunteer and a Cloverbud advisor for the Backyard Gang 4-H Club.
So just kind of an overview of our training today. We have lots of different things to talk about, some activities that we're going to share as we kind of go along. We want to give you a good foundation about what the Cloverbud program is about. We'll talk about some overview, the goals of the program, also the difference in Cloverbud clubs. We're going to talk about something called spin clubs in a little bit, maybe a term that you have not heard of. Also, your role as a Cloverbud volunteer, what are your responsibilities? And then the resources that we have for you to use for curriculum, different activities, and then how you can plan those club meetings. And then we'll wrap up at the end with Cloverbud Myth Busters, some true-false questions for you to answer as well. So as we think about the goals of the Ohio 4-H Cloverbud program, it has been around for several years. I think it was started in the early 90s, Cloverbuds did. And a lot of people, when it first started, thought we were just lowering the age range for 4-H membership. But really, there's an entire program around Cloverbuds that we are working to promote healthy development of children. And specifically in the area of mentally, physically, socially, and emotionally. So we're going to talk about each of those a little bit more specific in a couple of minutes. But the specific goals of the Cloverbud program are for children to develop life skills, and we want them to learn about self-understanding, building their self-esteem, social interaction, getting along with others, decision-making, giving them some practice decisions that they can make and make some good choices. And also it's a time of learning and also learning how to learn and the different steps that can happen as a result of that. And also physical mastery. They are growing, developing, and changing every day. And so there's lots of physical development that takes place as part of that as well. So this slide really gives a great comparison of the two different programs. It compares Cloverbuds to our older 4-H youth program. So for the age requirement for Cloverbuds, it is at least 5 and enrolled in kindergarten as of January 1st. So when we think about our guidelines, we always like to say K through 2. So kindergarten through 2nd grade is our main guideline, but specifically they have to be 5 and enrolled in kindergarten as of January 1st. When we look at the two different types of learning, we can see that Cloverbud learning is activity centered. It's more cooperative based, where you as the volunteer, you're planning activities from one meeting to the next. And most likely the activity that you may teach at meeting 1 is going to be very different than the activity that you teach at meeting 2. So for the type of learning for our older youth, it's project centered because we have project books. And then that also becomes a competitive type of learning because of competitions that we offer as part of 4-H, and then ultimately it might be part of junior fair as well. So the type of instruction is leader directed for Cloverbuds. So you are the leader for your Cloverbud group. So it's your responsibility to come up with the activities and to plan the different things that your group is going to do. For the older group, of course, advisors are still involved and very involved, but it's more self-study and it's more individually directed depending upon what the 4-H member wants to do for their project. Recognition is going to be more participation for Cloverbuds. We're not going to be placing members or having competitive events, which is a lot of the focus of our older youth program. So there's going to be competition, maybe awards, achievement goals, as well as participation in the older program. And so the learning resources, and Catherine will talk a lot about these as we go on in our presentation, but they're going to be more approved activities that you're doing with the older, or excuse me, with the Cloverbuds. And with the older youth, that's going to be project manuals. County Fair is going to be just exhibition for Cloverbuds. We know that some fairs may have some things that we call pee-wee showmanship, and, but those are not sponsored by 4-H. Those are conducted by the county fair boards or the fair board that is in charge. So those are not 4-H sponsored events. And the older youth, of course, we have exhibition and competition at our local fairs. So again, just a kind of a nice overview. It helps us to understand the difference within the two programs. And of course, I think the main focus I want to point out here is the type of learning that takes place that's activity centered versus project centered. So there are a few different types of Cloverbud clubs, and the one that you're probably most familiar with and that both of you are a part of, you're part of an existing community club. So the club has older members and it also has Cloverbud members. One of the newest directions that Ohio 4-H is moving is we're starting what we call SPIN clubs or special interest clubs. So these can be for older members to have, for example, a photography club, a garden club, a robotics club, fishing club. Those are just some examples, but there can also be Cloverbud clubs. So these Cloverbud clubs are specifically for Cloverbuds, K through 2nd grade. And it is a series of 6 different activities. So it's going to be more, when we say special interest, it's going to be short term. It's going to have a beginning and an end. Unlike our community clubs, they might meet spring, summer, fall, maybe take off the winter. But a spin club is going to be 6 sessions and then it'll be finished. So a little different approach there. It's a great way for parents that have an interest in getting a group of kids together of the Cloverbud age to have a group and then be done. But it's also a way that we can, once the Cloverbuds are involved in this type of a spin club, then we can feed them on into an existing community club that when they become old enough to join in the 3rd grade. And then we also have some classroom, the classroom setting is another place that teachers can get involved with having a Cloverbud group, or maybe an after school club. It could be an after school standalone club, or it might even be part of an after school program. So working with these youth, 6 to 8 year olds. So we're going to specifically focus on, if we go back to the goals and objectives of the program, you probably saw these words there: physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally. So this is our focus for the Cloverbud program, but we're going to accomplish these things by the different activities and the programs and things that we do with the members. So we're going to break these down a little bit and look at each one of these separately. So first we're going to take a, whoops, let me back up just a second. So as we kind of look at these different ages, they are more generalizations. So what I may have on my screen might not be for a particular age, but it's again, more of a generalization of an age category. We do know, and the reason for that is because children do develop at different rates. They grow at different rates and also mature at different rates as well. So physically, let's take a look at this first. So we know that there's lots of physical changes that are happening in this particular age group, and it's those gross motor skills as well as the fine motor skills that they are developing. So the things that we do through our Cloverbud activities are going to build upon these. So we want to make sure that we have a good balance of those activities. We just always don't want to be using the scissors or writing with the pencil for those fine motor skills. We also want to have some outdoor or playtime, recreation time that's going to allow them to build those gross motor skills as well. So as part of that, we want to make sure that we're changing activities often. I believe the timeline is if for an activity for this particular age group of Cloverbuds, we should be changing activities every 7 to 10 minutes. So if we should be just changing activities, either changing topics or changing the type of activity we're doing. Maybe it's going to be a sit down activity for a short period of time to focus on something. And then maybe you're going to read a book to follow that up or whatever that activity might be. But we're going to change activities often because of their attention span. So we also want to be prepared to provide assistance with tasks if members need help. Maybe they're not quite capable of using the scissors or maybe drawing some things that we want them to do. So they might need some additional help with those types of activities. And we also want to remember that children finish tasks at different rates. Maybe one child is really good at cutting things out or drawing, but maybe they have a little bit more difficulty with the physical activities of kicking a ball or tossing a ball or accuracy, maybe with recreation. So this is a nice slide here about the physical development of our young people. So mentally, we want to think about just what all those different skills that they are developing, and verbal skills is one of those that kids are gaining a lot of verbal skills, whether it's the ability to read, write, or use numbers, and they're also developing those skills to think more logical. Sometimes we also think about young children of either thinking black or white, and so they kind of have trouble of maybe that progression of thinking logically, what are going to be the consequences of this decision that I make? Or how can I think about all of the different consequences or the different options for a decision that needs to be made? And we know that kids are very curious, and especially this particular age group. They're very curious about the world around them and the things that are taking place. So we want to, as we think about how this interprets into the things we do with Cloverbuds, we want to plan activities that are going to allow for exploration. So we don't want to always be sitting at a table and thinking about the things that may happen there, but maybe it's going on a walk. Maybe it's getting the hands dirty, going for a hike, doing some of those hands-on activities where things get messy. And so there's, for lots of exploration, kids like to explore. And we also want to allow time for those to celebrate successes. So it might be celebrating the successes of what's happening at home. Maybe a family got a new puppy and a member is excited about telling about that, or telling about a new baby brother or a new sister that's happening at home. So we want to celebrate those successes. Maybe it's celebrating a birthday that a Cloverbud member is having. But also, as we think about the mental development, we want to make sure that we're focusing on giving clear instructions. So it might be breaking down those instructions when we're doing an activity. First, you need to do this, and then once everyone has that completed, then maybe you're going to give the next instruction, or maybe you're going to give 2 or 3 instructions at once rather than 5 or 6 instructions. So just be conscious of that you want to break down those instructions and be clear. And if you can also include real life experiences, that helps to increase their learning. And those real life experiences might be things that they have experienced. So if you're talking about pets, of course, everyone is going to want to talk about their pet and share the type of pet they have, the name of their pet. And so that does make that a real life experience for them, as they, if they can relate to it, then that helps to build the learning. Okay, so socially, so self-control is developing, and the best place for this to happen many times is socially, and I think that's one of the greatest things that 4-H can offer kids, is to have that social interaction outside of the family and also outside of the classroom. And it's also the opportunity for kids to see others' perspective on things. Sometimes we might feel like We don't get to see the other perspective of what's happening in another family, or how we can make sure that kids are experiencing other things besides just what's happening within their own home. And also belonging is important. It's important for kids to be part of a group. And again, this is a great aspect that 4-H has to offer for all kids, is because they can be part of a group. And we know that that's really important with child development, that we are part of a group, and that enables us to rely upon others and also to give back and to serve others too. And just socially, we want to think about friendships, that friendships do change quickly in this particular age group. You know, maybe they're friends with someone last week, but then when they come home from school this week, maybe they're friends with someone else as their best friend now. So those friendships do change quickly. So some implications. We do want to allow members to work in same-sex groups, but we want to, because we know that the girls are saying the boys have cooties, and then the boys are saying the girls have cooties at this time, right? So we want to make sure that we respect that difference until that, but we do want to encourage positive interaction with the opposite sex, of course. So that's how we can maybe do that in some of they want to sit by their best friend, but then maybe when we have recreation or some of the other hands-on activities, groups can be mixed up a little bit more. So we also want to encourage children to talk and work together. And there's some really good activities that we can do to help encourage public speaking, or being comfortable about speaking in front of a group or in front of a small group and sharing our thoughts. So that's one way that you can encourage talking with each other as well. But we also want to provide individualized learning as well as learning in a small group. So most of the things you do at a club meeting is going to be learning in a small group, but then maybe there's something you want to send home. Maybe there's a follow-up activity of something that they could do at home with their parents, or with maybe an older brother or sister. Or maybe it's an activity that they're going to bring something back to the next meeting for the next activity that you're going to do. So social development is the fourth in this group that we talk about. And then finally is emotionally. Children are becoming more knowledgeable about their own feelings, and then also the feelings of those around them. So this is a really good way for us, again, to help kids develop emotionally, helping them to understand that they're not always the center of attention, and that the important part of it is that we want to be helping each other. And so that development can happen, again, through the activities that we do through 4-H club meetings. They also think that, or believe, this particular age group, that pleasing adults is important. So they're going to seek our praise and support. So we do need to praise and support them, what they're doing. We also want to be careful that we're not comparing one child to another, but we do want to offer the support and praise to all of them. And that can be done on an individual basis. So their perceptions are also of their self are forming. So they're curious about what others think of them. And so that's why that praise and support is important as well. So as we wrap up emotionally here, just as we think about some of the implications, we do want to use positive guidance and discipline to help with that, and also providing opportunity for meaningful feedback. And then we do want to avoid competition and encourage cooperation. So we want to encourage more of helping each other, because competition is not something that we do with the Cloverbud program. Okay, so as we wrap up this segment here, I like this title here. It says, Kids Act Their Stage. So we always hear kids act their age, but this is talking about kids act their stage. So it's characteristics and descriptions of Cloverbud age children. So for feeling, it's the self-concept. Self-concept is not strong enough to deal with failure. So this is, that's why, again, competition is not part of the Cloverbud program. they haven't developed that sense of competition yet. So feeling is one of those stages. Another stage is growing, and so their body proportions are changing. They do have that gawky appearance many times because they're mastering those physical skills. And then development happens as they practice those skills as well. Another stage is thinking. So their thinking is more concrete. I said earlier, it's more black and white. And sometimes we need to help them they need to see, feel, and hear or taste maybe what is happening around them. And then also just understanding how their words or how their actions affect their friends, or maybe affect their parents, or affect those around them. Relating. So relating, their main focus is their family, is their prime importance. And it's because their family is probably providing their security and identity. So many times kids don't understand what's happening outside of their home. The older they get, the more that world expands. And we know that we can help to do that with the 4-H program by expanding their knowledge about the world around them. And then also the relationship to age mates. So this is a relationship for those around them. So it does need to be in small groups, but also they'll interact with others of both sexes, and we can kind of help with that, build that interaction and build that trust with their friends around them. So the relationship to adults, and they do need to have that close relationship with adults. And again, we talked about that approval, that support that they need, and we need to be able to provide that for those youth as well. So again, kids act their stage. So when we think about those different things that they're doing, here's a little bit of the why behind some of those different stages.
Okay, so next we are going to talk about the role of the Cloverbud volunteer. And first of all, I would like to thank you for taking on the role of the Cloverbud volunteer. Sometimes it can be challenging, but oftentimes it is more rewarding to see the growth and development of the members of your club. So as we talk about the volunteer responsibilities of a Cloverbud advisor, you need to be willing to be able to provide an emotional and physically safe environment. So think about your meeting spaces and where you're meeting. Kind of look those over, make sure that there's no physical things that could harm them there, and then being able to provide that emotional support, making it a fun, welcoming environment for the Cloverbuds as they arrive. You also need to be aware of the philosophy and guidelines set by OSU Extension and the Ohio 4-H program, and then our county 4-H program here in Washington County. We need you to be able to inform and encourage your members, the members' parents, and other volunteers as they actively participate in 4-H opportunities that you're providing for them, and maybe 4-H opportunities that are provided by the county 4-H program and also the state 4-H program. One of those state 4-H programs would be the Cloverbud Challenge, which happens annually. We need you to be able to give support and recognition to members. Again, it's not a competition, so making sure that each member is recognized in a positive way. And understand the importance of being a positive role model. Kind of look at different characteristics that you have and then find those same characteristics that are positive in your members and being able to praise those characteristics. We also want you to have fun. Having fun in 4-H is the most exciting thing about the program. We want you to let your 4-H Cloverbud children know that you care. So offering some emotional support for them, letting them know that you're just as excited that they got the new puppy as they are, and that you know that makes them very happy. You also need to be committed to young people and their growth in all areas, and those areas that Bruce talked about earlier with being emotionally, physically, socially, all of those areas. And then we want you to utilize the Ohio 4-H Cloverbud curriculum, instructional material, or other approved activities while working with the 4-H Cloverbud children. And as we continue with this program, we're going to talk about some of those different things that you will find that we provide for you. So the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about group management and what that looks like. So your Cloverbud meeting should be planned ahead. You don't want to show up at a meeting and realize that you don't have enough materials or supplies. Also be on the lookout for stumbling blocks or situations that could trigger a problem. You also want to keep them really busy. Idle time sometimes for the younger children can be problemsome if they're waiting in line or waiting to take a turn, which is something they do need to learn how to do. Sometimes if that time frame gets too long, you'll lose their attention, and that's when problems could occur. We also want to keep things simple. Keep the rules of the game simple. Make sure that they understand how to play the game or how to do the activity that you're planning, and only have rules that you're able to enforce. You also want to make your expectations clear. You want to communicate with each of them about the activity or the project and establish those important routines, rules, and boundaries, and that'll help with the group management. You also want to reduce distractions and disruptions. So if there's an open window in a meeting room and there's stuff going outside that open window, draw the curtains closed. So maybe that's a less of a distraction for those Cloverbuds. Next, you don't want to wait for something to happen. You don't want to wait for that crisis. You want to be proactive. You want to address the problem while it's happening so that it's manageable. Intervene when you suspect a problem could be starting. The number one thing to help with that is learning the kids' names. So if you're giving instructions during an activity and you find that maybe one child isn't listening or they're distracted by something, just calling out their name and bringing them back to that discussion can help. You want to be clear and specific while communicating. Give clear instructions. Use words that Cloverbud members will understand. So rather than saying, listen when I talk to you, instead of please sit down and look at me when I ask you to listen, just phrasing things a little differently so it's more of a positive communication. You also want to respect all the participants and their choices. Sometimes you may have a Cloverbud member who is shy and doesn't want to join in the game right away, but maybe a little bit later in the activity when they see their peers participating, they may jump right in. So pay attention to those individual responses during activities and respect that the choice not to participate in some activities could be beneficial for the child as well. And when you're doing this, also remember to emphasize each of their strengths. Find something that is a strength for them and point that out to them. You also want to be fair. When activities are planned, keep all participants in mind. Sometimes that's important, especially when you have a larger group of Cloverbuds. And then the last one here is maintain dignity. Respect participants' dignity. Behavioral issues and personal hygiene issues should be addressed privately. So if you have a child that maybe looks like they just come off of the farm or they've been playing and making mud pies all day, you don't want to point that out during the Cloverbud session. Talk with them later about, when you come to Cloverbud meetings, I would encourage you to clean up, wash your hands, maybe change that shirt if it's looking a little dungy or dirty. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to use Cloverbud curriculum, and there are several different curriculum items that you can utilize, and we're going to go through some of those. So the first one is the Big Book of 4-H Cloverbud activities, and each of the 4-H clubs in Washington County have been provided a clear plastic tote with all of these materials in them, and that was grant funded through the Ohio 4-H Foundation. So if you're unaware of the tote, reach out to us at Extension, or you could reach out to your advisor in your club. But the Big Book of Cloverbud Activities Guide should be something that's in that tote. This was revised to include updated versions of hundreds of activities for the Cloverbuds, and the book is broken down into different sections. So the first one is science and technology. Next is communications, expressive arts, then healthy living, environmental and earth sciences, personal development, citizenship or civic education, consumerism and family science, and then lastly, plants and animals. So there are several different activities in the guide, and you will be able to find each of those, including the supplies you'll need to host that activity. Next, we're going to talk about the experiential model. So right here in the middle, we want to draw your attention to you, the leader's role. So you want to debrief, focus, support, and have feedback provided. So first is your experience, the activity that you plan to do for the Cloverbuds. You want to then share the results, the reactions, the observations, and then process it by discussing, looking at the experience and analyzing and reflecting back on it. Then we're going to generalize. This is where we want to connect the experience to real world experiences for the kids, and then apply that to what they've learned to a similar or different situation that they've come across or maybe they've experienced before. So as we move on, we're going to talk about the Cloverbud resources for clubs, and there are several different resources. So the first one here is the 4-H Cloverbud blog, and there is an email or web address listed there for you. The blog is going to provide lessons, activities, and ideas for Cloverbud programming, and allows readers to subscribe to the site and receive email notifications when there are new posts. So our Cloverbud team is constantly providing new activities, maybe new books to read with a activity that goes along with that book, and those would be posted here at this site. Next, you have your 4-H Cloverbud Volunteer Guidebook, and this is a concise reference. It's a piece that's current, new, and perspective for 4-H Cloverbud helpers. The next piece on here is My Cloverbud Year. This is actually a project book similar to what older 4-H members would take, and the book is available through OSU Extension, and it's a fun way for Cloverbuds to learn the basics of 4-H and keep track of their activities and experiences. So throughout the book, each time you have a meeting, each time you do an activity, the kids will be able to jot down their favorite part of that activity, what they learned, maybe draw a picture, so that it keeps some sort of reference. This also allows them to learn how to start filling out that 4-H project book, which will help them later down the road as they do those self-guided learning activities with their 4-H membership. And then of course we have the Big Book of Cloverbud activities. And then next is the Clover Cubes. So each club should have the Clover Cubes, and it is a six discussion prompt that'll help children explore a particular topic and share the answers to friends. So I actually have one of the Cloverbud Cubes. You put it together, very simple. You allow the children to roll the dice. The red one is all about me. So each different Cloverbud dice has a different theme. So some of the questions on here is, what's your favorite thing to do as a family? What game do you like to play outside? When is your birthday? It gives some of those icebreaker games for kids to be able to learn and understand others' perspectives and learn about their fellow Cloverbud members. The next thing listed here is the choose and tell cards. This is similar to a deck of cards. It's colorful. It introduces Cloverbuds to public speaking and communication skills. There are 49 activities included in this, and they are divided into 4 different sections. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And then there are also Cloverbud kits. So OSU Extension provides some additional learning kits for clubs and for schools to use. Some of those that are geared toward the Cloverbud age group might include Fitness is Fun, where they'll learn about fitness activity and the importance of exercise. Food Fun, where Cloverbuds learn about My Plate. They play food bingo, they enjoy some music, and they read about eating the alphabet. Glow Germ Kits, it's an effective way to help children learn how to wash their hands. So that talks about, you know, singing happy birthday while you wash your hands using mild soap and water. And then looking back at how well you wash the hands. Next, there's a Lego building kit, and this is used for Cloverbuds to work in small groups to design and construct projects with Lego bricks. And earlier in the presentation, I talked about that Cloverbot challenge. These kits are available for that state 4-H program where each year the kids are given a different theme and they build some sort of activity out of those Legos and then present that at the state level. Another kit is Our Country. So this kit allows children to learn about how to fold an American flag, how to put together a floor puzzle of the United States and learn about different states. They learn the history of the flag, they learn about the 4-H flag, and then they learn a patriotic song to sing along with that. Then we have Sports Fun, where kids will learn about different sporting activities and learn how to build skills through that. And then the last one is the Science of Sound, where Cloverbuds will learn and experiment with sound and learn about how sound travels. They will play with pipe chimes. They'll do some coloring activities and play games to learn, and then they will also have some CDs or music with those sound clips. Okay, so next I want to show you some of those choose and tell cards I was talking about earlier. So these are just some examples of the choose and tell cards. I chose 4 different ones, and you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner that there are circles on the cards. Those circles are going to indicate the level of difficulty. So the yellow card with the smiley face on it in the left-hand corner is actually an easy card. And then the horseshoe would be considered medium, and that would be the purple card, or I'm sorry, yeah, the purple card. Then the star, which is the red card, is intermediate, and the 4-H clover is considered difficult. So knowing the age range of the kids in your club and knowing how developed they are and where they are with some of those developmental goals would determine what activities you're going to do. So as we continue to work through some virtual activities, maybe not necessarily face-to-face, these 4 are ones that you could possibly do virtually. So let's take a look at setting the place at the table. As we start to come back to eating dinner together at our homes and having those family dinners, this would be a good one to help the kids learn how to actually set the table. So first, if you wanted to do this activity virtually, you would ask the kids to get a piece of paper, a fork, a knife, and a spoon, a napkin, a plate, and a cup. So you can use the piece of paper, and then you're going to ask them to set the table. So excuse me. So you're going to have the piece of paper here. You're going to start with the plate, and the plate goes right in the middle of that piece of paper. And then you could glue these on here, and that would take a little extra time for us today, so I'm not going to do that today. However, we can continue with this. So you can have your napkin, you can fold it up, and it goes on your left-hand side. So that would be over here, I believe, for you guys. And then your spoon and knife go on the same side, and that would be placed on the opposite side of the napkin, and it would go here. And then your fork is going to go over on top of the napkin, and then you top it off with your cup, which goes over the spoon and knife section. So this is something that you can do. Most kids are at home and they would have access to those materials. If you're doing this activity face-to-face, maybe you want to start off your activity with having the kids design their own placemat. And so using markers, crayons, letting them design those different things that they need. And then they're able to take that placemat home with them as you learn how to set the table. The other activities here, making a paper airplane, that is very simple as well. So again, just having a sheet of paper that they're able to use, folding it. And when you talk with younger kids about folding paper, there's the hot dog style of folding paper, which is long ways, or the hamburger style of folding paper, which you fold it down in half. So a lot of kids know what a hamburger and a hot dog is, and that kind of relates some shapes for them as well. So being able to make the paper airplane. The dog origami is doable as well. However, it is a little bit more difficult. So if your Cloverbud members are younger, that may be one that you want to do in a face-to-face setting. Okay, so we want to plan our Cloverbud meetings, and we want to plan those ahead of time. For Cloverbud meetings, you want to have a plan. Make sure that you have things jotted down, and keep a log of the activities you're doing so that you don't repeat something. So as you think about your first Cloverbud meeting, the very first meeting that you have at the beginning of your Cloverbud year, you want to have a welcome and a get acquainted session. Having the kids introduce themselves, giving some facts about them, maybe what school they go to, what grade they're in, things like that. You want to have a little bit of discussion. And also with that, you want to remember that you're going to be doing your American Pledge and your 4-H Pledge. So some of that discussion could be going over those two pledges and, you know, how to say it, what we do, we stand, we put our hand over our heart, things like that. Offer a short Cloverbud activity, something that's not going to take a lot of time. Talk about 4-H club enrollment. So getting those enrollment forms in with the activity listed as the Cloverbud activity with all those emergency contacts and things. You want to offer a closing program and then provide refreshments and recreation possibly at the end. So your second meeting and beyond, you want to again be able to provide that welcome message and maybe do an icebreaker activity. If your club meets every couple weeks, then this might be something that icebreaker activity can fall off at meeting 3 or 4, because by that point maybe the kids are learning each other's names, they are comfortable around each other. However, if you're a club that has a once a month meeting, providing that icebreaker activity in the beginning could be beneficial because they're still learning who each other is, as well as you may be still learning their names. Again, we want to start off the meeting with reciting pledges, have a Cloverbud activity, have the closing, your recreation, and again, provide refreshments. And refreshments that can be provided, one of the H's in 4-H is healthy. So we want to be able to provide healthy snacks to our club members. A lot of times a Cloverbud parent will volunteer to provide that snack for that meeting, and then a different parent will provide it for the next meeting. So you may want to consider a sign-up sheet at your first meeting to get those volunteers in place. Okay, so the next worksheet here is how to plan out your Cloverbud activity. So the first part of that is just your meeting location, the date and time that you're going to have your meeting, and you're going to open up the meeting with the traditional U.S. pledge and the 4-H pledge. There will be roll call or attendance taken by the secretary, and a treasurer's report will be given, and then the Cloverbuds are going to move to the Cloverbud meeting area. So to get started, you want to determine what activity that you're going to do, and then what supplies you're going to need to complete that activity. As you continue to explore the topic that you're working on or that you're doing for that meeting, sometimes it's a good idea to maybe do that activity ahead of time so you work out any bugs that you might be having, or maybe you find a different way to present the activity other than the instructions that were given. You want to look at helpers that you may have. Maybe you have some parents of Cloverbud members that also join you, and asking for some hands-on help from them to you know, help with giving the supplies to each of the kids or different things like that. You want to close out your activity and again offer some praise for those kids for completing the activity, and maybe telling them how awesome their placemat was that they just made, or that you're really excited for them to go home and set their tables that night. And then going beyond, you want to look for ideas to follow up for things at home or after the meeting. So maybe that's a phone call to a parent, just saying, you know, what was discussed. When our Cloverbuds finish with their activity, they join the older 4-H members and they do a little presentation and they show off whatever they've learned at that meeting. So it may be going into that meeting and just letting the older kids see their placemats that they made that day, and then having a demonstration and letting each kid set a piece of that table. So that's a way to also touch base or go beyond. And then the Cloverbuds will adjourn their meeting. Make sure that your Cloverbud member has a parent or guardian present when that meeting is dismissed. So when we talk about planning your Cloverbud meetings, you want to plan for about a 20 or 30-minute session, and that's for the entire meeting time. Again, Cloverbuds, if they're caught idle or if there's a lot of idle time, they could get distracted during that time. So the next slide here shows just a Cloverbud meeting and activities log. So you're able to put the date and time and location of your meeting, and then the activity or the topic that you covered, and who provided the refreshments or what refreshments were provided. This will help you as you plan not just for your current 4-H year, but throughout multiple 4-H years. Cloverbuds typically are in the Cloverbud program for anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So if you have a Cloverbud that's been in the program for 3 years and you're repeating the same activities each year, they may not get as much benefit out of that. Where if you're keeping a good log of the activities that you're providing for them, and that you're rotating those through on a annual, biannual, you know, every 3 years, you'll be able to offer different activities and strategies of learning for them. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Well, we're on the downhill slide, so just want to do a little bit of a review. And so the question is, why are Cloverbuds special? And this is kind of an overview of some of the different things we've talked about, but it's also helping us to rethink about some of the goals of the Cloverbud program and emphasize some of the main points. So we know that at meetings, our activities are cooperative and done in small groups. So again, that key word is cooperative there. Also, our activities are focused on life skills. So it's not just what is happening at this meeting or the next meeting, it's developing life skills that are going to travel with this child all of their life. So the things that we're teaching them are things that are going to stick with them. They're going to be able to use in other areas of their life as well. Also, the activities are oriented towards success of each member. So we talked about the different learning styles, whether they're physically active or more social active, whatever it might be. We want all of the activities to be success oriented. So the meetings are also to provide a variety of short-term experiences. And I think you've kind of heard a great overview of how you want those activities to be different. You want them to be changing on a frequent basis every 7 to 10 minutes, and also to have a good variety from one meeting to the next. Also at the fair, Cloverbuds exhibit and they don't compete. So that's just the emphasis again on no competition as part of the Cloverbud program. Safety and liability issues require restrictions concerning animals. And so that is why we don't have animals around our Cloverbuds. We're talking large animals. Of course, there might be some small animals that maybe some of the older members might bring in for some demonstrations, but we're not going to have Cloverbud members physically holding and being in control of animals. And development is still budding. So those activities must be age appropriate. So just be mindful of the activities that we are doing and that we want them to be age appropriate. And we also know that Cloverbuds lack full understanding of winning and losing. That's a development that happens over time. And that again goes back to the point of no competition. And they are distinctly different from the 9 to 19-year-old program. Not only are the members different, but the goals and direction of the program is very different as well. And then finally, they share safety and fun as common goals. So again, why are Cloverbud special? It's in the name. And as you can see, all of the different points there that we talked about. So as we do wrap up, this is the final activity for our presentation today. It's the Cloverbud Mythbusters. So I am going to ask you to unmute and help me with the answers. It's either going to be true or false. So here we go. Here's the first question. Cloverbuds are not considered real members. True or false?
False.
False. Very good. So they are members. Their years in 4-H do count. So if they come on as a Cloverbud member at kindergarten, that's year 1 of their 4-H membership years. Number 2, Cloverbud membership does not count toward total years of membership.
False.
False. Very good. So again, I think I already gave the answer to that question. It does count toward their total membership years. Cloverbud leaders are just babysitters.
False.
That was a quick answer on that one as false. That's right, because there are so many things that you can do to develop those kids during the time that you have them at a Cloverbud meeting. Number 4, there are no objectives for the Ohio 4-H program.
False.
False is correct. So there are objectives. As we talked about earlier when we started, we're really focusing on the social, mental, physical response, that development of what is happening. And we're doing that in a way that is developed to help kids reach their fullest potential. Number 5, Cloverbuds may show hogs as long as the hogs are on a leash.
False.
False, very good. Kind of a trick question there. So I think an educator in Ohio actually did have this question one time or another. So that's where that came from. So number 6, it is acceptable for Cloverbuds to purchase project books and complete projects like older members.
False.
Correct, it is false. However, we do have the My Year in 4-H that members that you can use in your club It's My 4-H Cloverbud Year is the proper term of that publication that was talked about in the presentation. So it's again, as Catherine talked about, it's a nice way for them to be able to record the things that they're doing and to begin to have that piece in their hand that they can keep some records. But they are not going to be purchasing project books and completing those older projects like the older members would be. Number 7, Cloverbud clubs may be standalone clubs.
True.
Yes, it is true. This has been false prior to this year, so this is true. Since we have Cloverbud spin clubs, they can be a standalone club. So that's exciting. I think this is going to be a great step for us to be able to grow the number of Cloverbud clubs and the number of Cloverbud youth that take place, that participate in these clubs. Number 8, crafts are the main focus of the Cloverbud program.
False.
False. They can be the main focus if we allow it, but I think with the big book of Cloverbud activities and the lots of different lessons that we offer, we want to try to focus on more learning of activities rather than crafts. Now, a craft may be something that might emphasize a particular lesson. That's okay, but it shouldn't be the only thing that we do at a Cloverbud meeting. Number 9, Cloverbuds may exhibit horses as long as the horses are miniature horses.
False.
False again, okay. That's correct. I don't think I need to say too much about that one. And number 10, you may skip being a Cloverbud if you have a sibling in the 4-H program for older 4-H youth.
False.
Right, because we do have age guidelines for our Cloverbuds as well as age guidelines for the older program as well. So traditional 4-H membership starts in the 3rd grade. And so that's kind of our guideline in Ohio that we follow by. Must be that old before you can take an older youth project. So as we wrap up today, I want to thank everyone for participating.